Good morning, everybody. Glad to have you here today. If you want to follow along, we'll be back in the book of Acts in the 13th chapter, and we're just going to look at one verse today, verse 3. While you're finding that, I hope you had a great weekend, and I hope you have a good week. And let's look at this one verse. Um, Brief, but I think there's an important lesson here for us. It says, then, after fasting and praying, they laid their hands on them and sent them off. Just to refresh your memory, since it has been since Saturday, I guess, been a little bit of time, that we started off the 13th chapter with the church gathering in Antioch, a group of the leaders of the church, and as they are there, they commission Barnabas and Saul to go out onto the mission field, to go out into the work. And so it says after that point, it says they're fasting and praying. They laid their hands on them and sent them off. And what I want to call your attention to here as we look at that verse is that we see in the early church, we see in verse 2, it says that they were worshiping and fasting. Verse 3, it says now they are fasting and praying. And so they didn't just decide we need to send some missionaries over to Galatia or Ephesus or wherever. They sought the face of God. Again, it had began. It was birthed in worshiping and pray and fasting. Now they commission it with prayer and fasting. And so this idea they had was not, again, one that was made out of, wasn't a good business decision. It wasn't a good geographic decision. They didn't look at the demographics and decide over here's a big area where nobody's ever preached the gospel, so let's go over there. And you know, all those have maybe part of the element. We need to look at those things, especially the demographics, and see areas that where people need to hear the gospel, those kind of things. But what really provoked them, what led to this effort, was again their worshiping and fasting, listening to the Holy Spirit tells them to do something, and then even after the Holy Spirit leads them, then they continue to fast and pray for Barnabas and Saul. They're praying for his leadership, his power, for direction on all these things. And so, again, it came out of a gathering of God's people who were meeting together, and then they go on and have a specific, what it appears here, anyway, is that they have a specific meeting to commission, to launch out, to send these men out. And I'd like to point out to you here is that we often talk about in an ordination service that we are setting someone apart. Notice that the church is not the one setting Saul and Barnabas apart. The Holy Spirit had already did that. The Holy Spirit chose them. The church was just acknowledging it. They were just simply agreeing admitting, confessing that they understood the calling of the Holy Spirit, and they're committing to support these men and to pray for these men in this, and you know that we can take this lesson, I think, and use it and apply it in so many areas in the church today, in Christian life today. You know, many times. And I'm certain, I can't think of an exact example, but I'm certain that I have been guilty myself of many times we might see a legitimate need, an area where the church could get involved in something and do genuine ministry. And because the need is there, because we see it, because we may even have the resources to deal with it, we just jump in head first without ever consulting and considering, is this where the Holy Spirit wants us to go, and wants us to be involved individually. The same thing. Um, Maybe a little off course here, but a lot of times I'll have somebody come to me and say, for example, hey, we need to start a food pantry. Just off the top of my head. That's not even a real story, but just that's an example. We need to start a food pantry. I'm like, great. When do you want to start? And then they back up. They want somebody else to do it. They see a need, and it's a legitimate need, and it's a good need. It's not a bad ministry, but is the Holy Spirit of God actually leading us into that area, or is it just our knee-jerk reaction to a situation? And so individually, corporately as a church, we need to follow this model. Is the Holy Spirit leading us? The Holy Spirit's the one that calls and sets them aside. We then, in fasting and praying, join in and acknowledge that the Holy Spirit is working, and then we follow along and support what the Holy Spirit is wanting to do. There's an old phrase that I think that I've heard over my life, said, no need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to find what God is doing and get on board 100%. Have a good day, and we'll see you here tomorrow morning.